We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That was then Senator John F. Kennedy in the first audio recording of the Declaration of Independence in 1957. We'll come back to that. I'm Julian G. Simmons, and this is Our Gen Pod. Independence Day, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. A day you might expect us to celebrate like we did 50 years ago on our nation's bicentennial. A festive day of pride, parades, picnics, music, and a sense of unity among all 218 million people. It was a happy day in America. But a lot has happened in 50 years, and July 4th, 2026 is a far cry from the boisterous bicentennial of 1976, even further from the hot day in Philadelphia in 1776, when an assembly of brave, brilliant men delivered our Declaration of Independence, signaling the start of our bloody revolution that set America free from the tyranny of a distant king. We have had the privilege of living under those rights and responsibilities enshrined in the Declaration and the Constitution. For most of our history, they have been protected and upheld, a model for the world. But the last few years have thrown all of that into a storm of uncertainty. Millions of American citizens now fear our democracy is in jeopardy, and our sacred rights and institutions are crumbling. So what are we celebrating? When we conceived this episode, we asked for comments from listeners and others about what they feel about this year's 250th anniversary. We received a little more than a handful. To those few who did contribute, thank you. Your comments are intelligent, revealing, and thought-provoking. We'll hear those in a moment. But to be honest, we were surprised that more people did not join the conversation, although we realize that silence in itself is a powerful comment on where we are as a country. Many of us are reticent to exercise our freedom of speech for fear of being targeted for retribution. That is, in itself, a shocking statement of the state of our nation today, on this 250th anniversary of our great Declaration of Independence. Another disheartening sign is how few of us are even familiar with the documents that define our country. One poll revealed that 70% of Americans can't recognize a phrase from the Declaration and don't feel qualified to comment. Nearly half of Americans don't even know what we're celebrating today. According to a poll by the Cato Institute, out this week and reported on NPR, an astounding 60% don't know that the Constitution is to limit government power. Civics gets short shrift in most schools, and surveys reveal many students find the topic irrelevant or boring. One way to correct that is to listen to JFK's reading of the Declaration of Independence at the end of this episode. Share it with your kids and grandchildren. Discuss it with them and ask what connections they see that are relevant to today's political turmoil. You and your family can read the text narrated by JFK on our website. That's one great way to celebrate the 4th of July. Regardless of the downward slide of the past few years, we do have a reason to celebrate the Declaration of Independence itself, the spirit of rebellion it embodies, the idealistic vision it projects, and the hope that we can restore its original values in the coming years. So happy 4th of July. Now it's time to hear from those 7 courageous Americans who sent us their thoughts. We remove their names and where they're from for their protection. And if the government comes after us, we'll let you know. Here's the first of our voices, a psychotherapist who has an opinion on why people may be reticent to exercise their freedom of speech.
Hello, I'm a psychotherapist, and apparently people were reluctant to record their opinion for this edition of our Gen Pod, and I have an opinion about that. I think people might not want to comment on the Constitution and the Declaration without giving it some thought and rereading them for fear of sounding stupid. I would hate to sound intelligent by talking about those documents and being wrong in some way. The other thing is the reluctance of people to share their political opinions. And that reminded me of a client of mine. He's a United Airlines pilot, and he lost his job because he responded to a post on a company website in a political way. And he was just sharing his opinion. In any case, something called doxing occurred to this person. Apparently, doxing is when someone from the opposite party will publish your email and your physical street number and sort of point out to the rest of the MAGA people, here's a target for you. And so he got doxed like that. And the post that he posted on that website was then forwarded to Twitter and other sites where at some point the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, even commented on it. And so all of this exposure got him in trouble with United, and he lost his job as a pilot, which is a really good job. So that's just an example of how I think I'm also reluctant to say negative things about the opposition party for fear of being doxxed. That word is kind of new to the English language, but apparently it means that you're outed so that people can retaliate. Anyway, so those are the reasons I think people might be reluctant to comment on the Constitution and the Declaration. It's just my opinion.
With the way things are, nobody can be blamed for keeping their opinions to themselves. We're reading every day of regular citizens who have committed no crime, people like you and me being tracked down and arrested for perfectly legal protest. Just in the past week, 10,000 people have been detained, including a nun on her way to church who was snatched up and detained by ICE. A nun. A few of our listeners had the courage to express their anger openly.
I've never been so underwhelmed about 4th of July. I know Donald Trump will once again make it all about him. It's sad. I will go to our local celebration, the world's largest salmon barbecue, pitch in with the Rotary Club making corn on the cob, eat a salmon dinner, and watch the fireworks after. Locally, it will be a great celebration. But on a national level, I have apologized to my children and grandchildren for the state of our country 250 years after building the best democracy in the world. We have allowed special interest and power-hungry individuals to have free reign in these United States. We need to do more than make gains in the midterms. We need to rebalance our system of checks and balances. We need to reverse the ever-widening income gap. We need to all enjoy the fruits of a strong United States.
Well, the questions posed by our nation's 250th birthday arrive at a time when many of us are wondering who we are and who we're becoming. Hope does not always come easily in moments like this. I've spent much of my life disappointed in my country, not because I expected perfection, but I believed we could become better than we are. I don't admire the America that boasts. I don't admire the America that measures success solely by wealth, power, or military strength. It's the America of people who ask the difficult questions and expand the circle of belonging. People that create art and music, who pursue knowledge, and welcome strangers, and who tell the truth even when it isn't comfortable. No, I can't say I'm proud of everything America's done over the past 250 years, far from it. But I do remain grateful for those Americans who have continually at least challenged the nation to live up to the highest ideals. If there's anything worth celebrating on this anniversary, perhaps it's not the greatness, but our unfinishedness, the possibility that every generation can move the country a little closer to justice, wisdom, and compassion, at least more than it was before. Many of our problems are now very visible. The question is whether we can find the courage, humility, and the common purpose even to address them. I don't know that we can, but I'm hopeful.
Well, maybe 50 years ago, celebration of the Declaration of Independence, things might have not seemed that bad, but since then has been a steady Republican nationalist decline to the point where we are today, where it's the worst that I can think of. And as everybody says, it's only going to get worse before it gets better. So I don't know how that makes me feel. But I am resting my hopes on the midterms and hoping to see some turnarounds. I am seeing some hints of some turnarounds in the early elections, but this is a tough one. I'm not overjoyed, and I don't know how else to put it. And maybe things will be different. Maybe things will get better before they get worse.
We can hear a fluctuating feeling of anger mixed with hope in these comments, which hit home for many of us. Listening to the news now can be infuriating so much that we can't even listen anymore. Psychologists have seen so many patients with situational depression, anxiety, and a simmering fury, they've come up with formal names for the syndromes we're suffering from. Many of us are finding refuge in nature, like myself, or trying to make sense of it all through a spiritual or philosophical path.
Considering the 250th year since independence. They did it actually through many years of hardship. It was pretty amazing what they did. And then these guys built structures to prevent all that from happening again. Those are to be respected. So you think about the history and you think 1776. That's history, historical date, right? 1776. But there was the spirit of 76. Spirit. What was the spirit? Spirit of 76. What about the spirit of 26? Is there such a thing? What is the spirit of 26? Is there some shared spirit that we have? Is independence a historical spirit? Do we have that spirit today?
I happen to have a little burgundy copy of the Declaration, and I had to reread it. And I was thinking about the circumstances that caused Thomas Jefferson to begin writing this and how it got distilled down as we know it today. And I was wondering about how would we react to living under a monarchy that had so used us for our resources, our tax money, and other sorts of abuses to our rights. One of the things that I think about often is the kind of people who came across the ocean to the new colonies, and what did they want? They wanted a better life. They wanted to be able to get out from under the confines of European society and hierarchy. They wanted to be able to have their own hard work benefit themselves and their families. Not much different from what happens now when people come to this country. And I was thinking about the kind of people who would have come here. First, I thought of people that were artisans and free thinkers and social reformers. But I also think of those people who are just plain desperate. In present day, so when I think of how we're going to celebrate the the 250th year of this declaration, I think we don't want to make a theme park response to it.
In July 1976, I flew from London to Los Angeles. I was smitten by the United States of America and watching the celebrations of the bicentennial. We moved to Philadelphia, which was a bit of a slap in the face, given that very city was where a group of blokes put their John Hancocks on a large piece of paper and kicked all the king's men where the sun don't shine. America has changed in the 50 years that I've lived here. The difference between the America I knew 50 years ago and the one I'm part of today is very simply the absence of people sitting on their front steps discussing the day's news and arguing their beliefs over a pint of Schmitz. The country wasn't obsessed with politics as it is now. 24-hour news has fed the obsession. Disagreeing on a social media site on your phone while watching 16 sports events on cable TV, all while you're sitting on the toilet, doesn't exactly bring the same inspired discourse. America, for those of us who recognize life is more important than staring at screens all day, is a place with the greatest natural resources, the most wonderful fauna and flora. Every change has turbulence, but I believe when I am asked back in 50 years' time, I will report that we the people are doing okay. I would suggest that the US of A remains the land of hope and promise and is very much the proud nation it has always been.
Those are the voices that represent the values we're celebrating. Thoughtful, hopeful citizens exercising our precious First Amendment right of freedom of speech. One of many rights set in stone that are the solid foundation of America, which are also under threat. We empathize with the anger and we embrace the hope. Now, I invite you to join us in listening to the voice of a great American reading the Declaration of Independence, and you might take note of any similarities you hear between what the Declaration states and our current political climate. If you want to read along with President Kennedy, go to our website at www.ourgenpod.com and click on any read-along transcript button. The play controls are down to the left. This is Julian G. Simmons, and in spite of it all, have a happy 4th. Thanks for listening.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new gods for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having indirect object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish their right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative power, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amounts and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, to be tried for pretended offenses, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection. He has excited domestic insurrections among us. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of a right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown. For the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Unless otherwise noted, all content in this podcast is copyright unauthorized films. This podcast includes copyrighted material, which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. This content is used only where it is the specific subject of commentary by us and our guests as part of our effort to advance understanding of issues of social and historical significance. We believe that this constitutes a fair use of the material in accordance with the Fair Use section of U.S. Copyright Law Section 107, which reads, "The fair use of a copyrighted work for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research is not an infringement of copyright." Further information on this claim of fair use may be found on our website at rgenpod.com.